Hello, everyone. I am one of your co-hosts for Thrive with R3. I'm Jamie Gassmann. And just a little background on me. I am the wife to my wonderful husband of almost 20 years. I am the mother to two amazing children, my 13-year-old son and my soon-to-be 11-year-old daughter, who is like pretty much going on 20. And I'm the vice president of marketing at R3 Continuum. I've been in marketing as a marketing leader for the last 17 years. 12 of those years I've been at R3 Continuum, and in the last 2 years have served on our executive leadership team. So my perspective in bringing to this show to you all is my experience as an executive leader, balancing not just my work life, but my home life and all of the different things that I'm involved in with my kids' schools, their sports and other activities, as well as, your own personal interests as a human being as well. So I keep very busy and look forward to sharing a lot of great information with all of you. George?
Welcome, everybody. I am your other co-host, and I'm thrilled to be here sharing this experience and podcast with Jamie. My name is George Vergolias. I am also a father of two. I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son, and they are wonderful kids, except when they're not, which is rarely, but I'm human and we have our difficulties from time to time. My background is I'm trained as a forensic psychologist. I have 30 years of experience. I'm also a certified threat manager with an expertise in workplace violence. I'm also a life and executive coach and an entrepreneur. So I have a wide range of background that I bring to bear in my role as chief clinical officer with R3. And I've been there for about 12 years now, serving our clients and consulting with large corporations on building cultures of resilience. And I'm thrilled to be here with Jamie.
R3 Continuum, if you've stumbled upon this podcast and you're not familiar with who R3 Continuum is, R3 Continuum, we are a pioneer and innovator of workplace behavioral health for the last 35 plus years. What we're most known for is our response work that we've done within workplaces in response to critical incidents, workplace disruptions, natural disasters, and really anything that impacts the emotional stability of the workplace itself. So any large scale incident you've seen likely in the news and you see in the articles following that counselors were on site, that's R3 Continuum. We have a network of over 7,000 clinicians we can deploy anywhere within the United States, and we do so on average of about 2,500 times a month. In addition to that, we also support workplaces with creative consultative services, particularly in this last year, we launched in regards to leadership support, two services, one that addresses leader mental wellness counseling and one that addresses performance coaching. And that's in response to leaders not having solutions that are specifically designed to support them as an executive leader or a senior leader or some of your top professionals in high stress industries that maybe aren't going to be the ones that raise their hands because of that fear of stigma or that fear of reputational damage to their reputation and themselves. So those services are also available. And that's some background on who we are as an organization. George, did you want to add anything else to that?
That was very well said. My only add would be that leadership matters. If you're listening to this, you probably know that. But more importantly, healthy leadership matters. And leaders impact everyone within their orbit. And the choice is, are we going to impact people in a positive way that creates workplaces that thrive, or in a negative way that leads to more of a toxic workplace? And so part of our mission is to really help workplaces thrive and develop more of a healthy leadership and healthy culture so people can thrive and do their best.
Yeah, and really supporting those workplaces under those different circumstances that, they might be feeling that their people need something, but maybe aren't quite sure what they need. And what R3 can do is help you to identify what that need is and get you the support that your people need when they need it most.
Absolutely. So I have a question for you, Jamie.
Yeah.
As we were developing the idea for this podcast and we were vetting it to different colleagues and professionals, I did quite often get the question of, why are you doing a podcast? And do we need yet another podcast? There's like 8 billion of them, right, circulating right now. And my answer was, we do need another one because of what we're going to be covered. So how would you answer that question?
Every podcast has a different mission. has a different voice and a different audience that it's speaking to. And the other thing is that, everybody consumes their content differently too. So as an organization at R3, we really want to make sure we are providing supportive content, information, and tools and resources for our customers, for people who are within our community, within the industry, so we can make sure that they are able to access support tools to help them in guiding how to create a thriving and resilient and psychologically safe workplace. Yeah. And so though it might seem like another podcast, it's all about who that podcast is targeted towards. Yep. And so you can have ebooks out there for those who prefer to read, multiple pages of content. But there's something with audio that others prefer to consume. And so it's really just about having multiple resources and multiple ways and channels for people to be able to access it.
And I was just going to add, for business leaders and organizational leaders, taking care of oneself is about more than just taking care of oneself. Yeah. Because of the ripple effect when you don't take care of yourself and the impact on the organization from the bottom line and the financials all the way up to creating cultures where you can attract talent and retain talent and then thrive and grow and have innovation. And so that's really what we're striving for, is to get critical ideas and innovative ideas out there so people can understand that there's ways to build those thriving cultures at workplaces.
And to support that, it incorporates different voices into what R3 is sharing, the knowledge we're sharing, bringing in other guests who are experiencing different things. That could be the ideation that person needs to go, oh, I like that. I'm going to give that a run at my workplace and see how it goes. Indeed. And sometimes it's just inspiration and hearing another voice. And there's just something with power in listening to audio. You're able to just kind of turn it on and work in the background, have it running in the background while you work, which is great. So getting after our goal with the podcast itself. So George and I will be talking with various business, HR, and industry leaders on topics that relate to how they help their people and their teams to thrive amidst the challenges, changes, and disruptions that are facing not just their employees, but their workplaces. And I know we're 4 years out from when COVID first emerged, where people went to remote work. Workplaces are still seeing different dynamics that come from that. And there's also a lot of economic and cultural different changes too, from just being, in the United States itself, that, speaking to these leaders helps to bring different ideas of how they're tackling that.
Absolutely.
So I know we may have already addressed this for the listeners when we were talking about kind of the purpose of our podcast, but I'm curious, from your clinical expertise and experience in working with workplaces through some of these challenges, changes, and disruptions, what do you think, why do you think people should listen to our podcast? What do you think they're going to get out of that, other than kind of some of the things we've already mentioned?
Great question. And it's a very relevant question. I often think of this, anyone that's listening already, go back in time to when you were 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years old and think about how your parents taught you how to be emotionally resilient or display an emotional high IQ. And everyone should be looking up at the ceiling because no one got that. Now, I'm not saying that, because if you got that, you're probably 12 years old. Because if you go back 25, 35, 45 years ago, we just weren't taught that. I'm not saying there weren't some select parents that did. So when you think about resilience, psychological well-being, psychological resilience, most of us as adults that are in leadership roles in business, we kind of had to learn that later in life. And that's not something that just comes naturally. So when we talk about building cultures of resilience and well-being and how you navigate and adapt to workplace disruption, there's skill sets involved and there's expertise involved that I think is really important to get out there to the larger business world. So people understand that there's resources and there's insights that can be had that they can bring back to their workplaces and continue to shape more resilient and adaptable cultures.
Yeah. And I mean, and depending on what size workplace they might be in, and, even if they're in a larger workplace and feel like they've got a number of resources, there are a lot of, potentially leaders or HR leaders or, those running those organizations that might not have some of the resources now or the skill sets to what you're pointing out, and may not have anybody internally that can help with that coaching. And so this show will help to give them some of those resources to hear from others that have either experienced it, are experience it, and kind of get some best practices.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what we're going to be talking about is not only the what to do or what resources to consider or pursue, but the more nuanced, how do you do it? Because we all know of different organizations that have similar resources. One of them does it extremely well, or they execute very well. The other does not. And that makes a huge difference. I mean, Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, is all about that, comparing different companies that have very similar makeups, but one executes well and the other does not. So what I'm looking forward to is getting into some of that nuance with the guests we're going to have on, and as we navigate forward and talking through that. And I heard something not long ago which said the reason that you're tired in your job is not that you're doing too much, but you're not doing enough of what makes you come alive. And one of our mottos is making tomorrow better than today to help people thrive. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that plays into who we are as a company and how that's translating to this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Having that mission of making tomorrow better than today by helping people thrive is a powerful one. When we go into any type of work that we do at R3, it's always about how do we make that workplace even better. They might be struggling through a catastrophic accident or incident that, either they had no control of or didn't see it coming, or they are proactively reaching out to us because they want to make things better. And, by being able to have that ability to provide that level of support in workplaces, where we can help leaders to be better leaders, we can help their people be better workers, and overall have that impact of making that employer and that workplace even better is all that we focus on as an organization. In fact, we measure our success by the number of lives that we impact. Yes. And so when you think about this podcast and starting this show, and we hit on it in some of the things we talked about that building resiliency, having the tools and resources needed to be able to help support your people better, and that we're going to help provide that with this show. And that how, you talked about the how. How do you do that? That's where Thrive comes in. It's really tying back to that. How do we help make, your tomorrow better than today? How do we take you a step forward in creating that thriving work environment that you're aspiring towards? And so Thrive with R3 is about doing that in every episode, having a guest on, touching on those hows, touching on those key learnings, sharing some of the challenging things and then how they overcame it, so that we can get after helping you make tomorrow better than today and help your people thrive in the end. Yeah. So it's really about a journey, taking you on that journey to thriving, either as a leader, as a person, because we can talk a little bit about some of the things that if you are a leader, that you could be focusing on too, and helping yourself improve. So it's all of those things. It's really taking you on that thriving journey with R3.
And with the goal of the audience learning from what leaders have gone through, what has worked, and as you said, what hasn't worked. Mm-hmm. And then using that to good effect as we go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Thrive with R3.
R3 is a workplace behavioral health pioneer and innovator, providing rapid response and ongoing behavioral health solutions that help people and organizations recover, perform, and thrive in the wake of disruption and stress.
For more episodes, insights, and resources, visit thrivewithr3.com.